Hi everyone, I'm Chris Anderson. Thanks for joining me for Santa-Seasia, a look at a tradition in the mountains that kicks off the Christmas season for many, the Santa Train. Now every year, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, you'll find hundreds of people lining the railroad tracks in more than a dozen locations in Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee, waiting for that first glimpse of Santa Claus of the season, or waiting to catch a stuffed animal, or maybe even a moon pie. It's a tradition that's more than a generation old, and we're going to explore that tradition in this year's Santa Train over the next half hour. The Santa Train's first run was in 1943 and was the brainchild of a group of businessmen in Kingsport, Tennessee at what is today the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce. The beneficiary of that idea would be those living along the northern tier of the Clinchfield Railroad's main line from Elkhorn City to Kingsport. The purpose of the Santa Train was to spread some Christmas cheer in the mountains.
It was the war years. Times were tough just about everywhere, but they were particularly tough in the coalfield region. So just as a very grand gesture, they talked to the railroad and they convinced them it would be a good idea to throw candy off the rear of the regular passenger train on the first Saturday after Thanksgiving. And so on November the 27th, 1943, at 6 a.m., which was the regular departure time, they left Elkhorn City with a guy named Joe Higgins dressed up in a red suit on the back of the train throwing off candy en route. And thus the Santa Claus train was launched. They continued to operate on the regular train each Saturday after Thanksgiving until passenger service ended in the mid-50s. Then the railroad continued to operate it as a special with their office car and a locomotive designed and equipped to provide steam heat. And that continued until '68 when the railroad restored this old 1882 steam locomotive, and that really pushed the train into the forefront. And it's continued to grow and prosper and get greater notoriety ever since. So from a little hard candy in 1943, now they throw off about 15 tons of stuff.
Now by the time the Santa Train turned 50 in 1992, it had long since returned to being a diesel-powered train. But through the cooperation of several individuals, as well as railroad giants CSX Transportation and Union Pacific Railway, steam returned to the Santa Train one more time.
For the 50th running of the train, CSX cooperated with Union Pacific, and to my amazement and everyone else's, they brought the world's largest operating steam locomotive, UP 3985, all the way from Cheyenne to Huntington, and they re-lettered it as Clinchfield 676, which was appropriate because the Clinchfield had six nearly identical engines to this in the late 40s and early 50s. And so that engine pulled the Santa Train in 1992, and it's still talked about. I mean, this engine was huge, and people who had never seen a steam locomotive, let alone something that big, were just amazed. Naturally, the 1992 train with the Challenger was probably the ultimate experience for me because I was involved in proposing it. I was the guy who designed the Clinchfield lettering, drew up the lettering chart, helped the Union Pacific crews get the engine to look like a Clinchfield engine, and obviously had a lot of insider experiences. It was just one of those things like going through the brakes of the Big Sandy and standing on the platform of a Union Pacific office car about 4 cars back from the engine and listening to that thing pull up through the brakes. I just had chills up and down my spine. I'm thinking, I can't believe this is happening. I don't believe I lived to see this. This is amazing. And then of course I cried, which is a good experience. It's all a good cry.
Now in the years since 1992, the Santa Train has continued to evolve. Gifts were once thrown from the train while the train was in motion, but that was changed to increase the safety of the train's spectators. Now, one thing that has continued to follow the Santa Train is the misconception that the train's purpose is to help relieve some of the poverty in eastern Kentucky and southwest Virginia. And that idea couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, I think it's a mistaken impression. A lot of people come in and say, oh, this is something the city of Kingsport does to help the people of southwest Virginia and eastern Kentucky once a year, and that's not it. It started as a nice gesture in the 40s, but it pretty quickly morphed into tradition. You see people coming to see the train and to get stuff thrown off of it from all over the region. So it's not just along the tracks from Elkhorn City and Hayside, Fremont and St. Paul, Dungannon, places like that. They're drawn in from everywhere. So it's all about tradition. It's an amazing thing. It's a good thing for CSX. They've gotten a lot of positive press because of it over many years. And it's certainly good for the city of Kingsport. And I would argue it's good for the entire region because it brings a positive message, a positive light. So it's entirely about tradition.
When we come back, the 2015 Santa Train gets underway.
You got two back there?
It's still dark as the Santa Train departs Shelby Yard at 6:30 in the morning to go south toward Marbone, the second of 3 stops in Pike County, Kentucky. For 15 minutes, Santa throws gifts off to the crowd at Marbone, packed near the rear of the train in the tight confines at the end of the Marbone Bridge off US 460. After departing Marbone and traveling along the Russell Fork of the Big Sandy River, the Santa Train arrives at Elkhorn City, where for 20 minutes, gifts are thrown from the train to the first of several massive crowds the train will encounter throughout the day. Perhaps the most scenic portion of the Santa Train's trip is just south of Elkhorn City as the train passes through Breaks Interstate Park, which greets the Santa Train with the impressive Pool Point Bridge. Traveling through the breaks and even further south through the communities of Hayside, Clinchco, and Fremont, Virginia, it becomes evident how impressive of an engineering feat the former Clinchfield Railroad, now CSX Transportation's main line, really is. Numerous tunnels, several bridges, tight curves. This truly is mountain railroading, one of the aspects that draws so many people all across the country to come see the Santa Train. And while we're passing through scenic Southwest Virginia, let's check in with the head elf himself aboard his train.
Hello everyone, I'm Shelby Steele. I'm here with Santa, and Santa's had a very busy day today. As you can tell, he keeps just waving at the kids, distributing gifts. So Santa, tell me what we're doing here tonight.
We're celebrating the 73rd running of the Kingsport Santa Train in CSX. We're keeping the tradition running. You'll notice all the elderly in here with that brand new little baby and a grandbaby in their child's arms, and just exciting day for everybody to come out.
What made you decide that you wanted to hop on a train and distribute toys this way?
These people in Southwest Virginia and Eastern Kentucky are so special to us. It's a way of us to say thank you and enjoy the Christmas spirit, and remember all your blessings that God's given you, and come out as a family and enjoy it.
So normally you come through a chimney and you don't get to experience the children opening their gifts. So what is it like for you to throw your gifts over the train and see the look on their faces?
The smiles and the grins, and when you can hand that special child the toy that you know they've been looking at and watching you hold, just gives you a thrill that you go home and wake up thinking about it at night.
And the question I'm concerned with is, what list did I make this year?
Well, you remember Santa has the naughty list and the nice list. And you made the nice list.
Oh, yes.
Now, Chris, a little iffy at this point.
All right, thank you, Santa.
Oh, come on. I've been good all year. Anyway, in each of the 3 communities I mentioned before, Hayside, Clinchco, and Fremont, the Santa Train makes stops to distribute gifts. And through each of those communities, CSX Transportation operates the rail line where countless railroad cars have passed over the last century. Longtime Santa Train volunteer Don Royston said CSX has remained committed to making the Santa Train happen every year, as have numerous other sponsors and partners.
There's 2 reasons we have a Santa Train. The number 1 reason is CSX picked up the tradition that Clinchfield had in allowing, of course they started out as a passenger train, but now there's no passenger service, so it's a freight line primarily. But they continued the tradition and have to this day thrown a lot at it. You can always count on Little Debbie's cakes, moon pies, wrapping paper, potato chips, foodstuffs. I wish that people realized what good corporate citizens are, people like Little Debbie's Cakes, McKee Bakers, and those over the years. My tradition is to eat a double fudge round, Little Debbie's cake, and a moon pie every Santa Train trip, and I have. And it's fun to go through the bins and search them out because you don't know where they are.
After the break, we catch up to a couple on the Santa Train who said they love volunteering as Santa's elves. By the time the Santa Train makes it to St. Paul, Virginia, where probably the second largest crowd of the day will be found, the Santa Train is more than halfway home, both in terms of time and mileage, and the long early day is beginning to catch up to the volunteers aboard the train. But those volunteers are inherently important to the Santa Train.
From the outside looking in, the Santa Train may look a little chaotic to most people. However, volunteers gear up for this day all year, and most have years of experience as volunteers under their belt. So, from the inside looking out, one would say it's organized chaos. Tom and Ruth Murda have volunteered on the Santa Train for several years. They say it's the spirit of the holiday season that makes everything worthwhile.
It's the spirit of Christmas for us. We work for a great company, CSX, and every year to come and to spread the giving of a corporation coupled with Food City and Dignity Wear, the crowds, the smile on the children's faces, the parents' faces, and grandparents have been coming and doing this for generations after generation. Just the spirit of giving in an area of the country that has so much poverty and really is in need of people to reach in and help them. I went to school in Eastern Kentucky, so it's very close to my heart, and to me it's something I'd like to do the rest of my career.
Tom adds, what better way to spend Christmas than being a part of Santa's crew? Reporting from the Santa Train for EKB News, I'm Shelby Still.
And those volunteers on the train are put through the ringer. All day long, volunteers are lugging boxes, totes, and moving gifts. Don Royston knows of the value of the hard work on Santa Train Day.
I think people, the more publicity gets along, they want to, I hate to say a piece of the action, but they want to know how they can help here in Kingsport. We'll have the packing party tonight, and I mean, you'll see people come out from all walks of life, the kids, the school groups. Southern North brings their trash busters out and recycle all the paper, and people like that, they just want something to do. So the regulars kind of stand back and let everybody else share in that excitement, because there's just not that many seats on the train. You've got tradition starting over. You'll see the great-grandmothers standing there holding a newborn baby, starting that tradition over again. Santa never leaves that back platform, I know. I've been around the train a long time, and they want to see Santa. If it's Grandma on the front porch, Grandpa, if he's on his tractor, he's out there waving at you, and he expects you to be there to wave back. So it's a real tradition that I want to see continue. You know, just being the volunteer in there, whatever role you play, it takes every one of them to make it happen. And who knows, as you progress through the ranks, you may end up, who knows, you may end up being Santa Claus someday.
After running through the Virginia countryside, the Santa Train eases into Dungannon, Virginia, where yet another massive crowd awaits St. Nick.
One thing's for sure, folks around here sure do love Santa Train. Santa Train!
As much excitement and as much gift-giving that was going on outside the train, there was just as much going on inside the train. Around 130 volunteers were working up a sweat, hustling and bustling around, packaging and bagging 15 tons of gift items while moving down the track at speeds up to 40 miles per hour. Although it may look a little chaotic, these volunteers were moving like a well-oiled machine. Each train car was filled with specific items, with volunteers performing specific tasks. There were holding cars, sorting cars, cars where snacks and fruits were bagged, and cars for putting age-appropriate gift bags together. It definitely takes a lot of work to make the Santa Train happen, but the work didn't just take place on the train. It started way before the train ever made its departure.
We gather all of our food and all of our toys, and we line it up on the sidewalk, and we pack. It's called a packing party. We usually have anywhere from 200, 250 to 300 at times, and then we pack and we do all that, and then we give a appreciative dinner to them. We really appreciate what they do and how they're helping us get all this together.
By the time the train rolled into Kingsport, thousands of gift items were responsible for thousands of smiles. Reporting from the Santa Train for EKB News, I'm Sean Allen.
After a 20-minute stop, the train continues south toward Fort Blackmore, Virginia, passing through some breathtaking scenery. The highway runs parallel to the railroad tracks, giving a van full of kids a great opportunity to get a little extra attention from Santa before the Fort Blackmore stop. After Fort Blackmore, the train continues on to one of the crown jewels of the Clinchfield route, Copper Creek Viaduct in Scott County, Virginia. Built in 1908, Copper Creek Viaduct flies the former Clinchfield line high above the adjacent Clinch River and Norfolk Southern Railway's main line. In better times for mountain railroads hauling coal, it was not uncommon to catch trains on both bridges at the same time. The bridge remains an impressive sight and one of the most popular scenic locations along the Santa Train route. Copper Creek also signals a winding down of the Santa Train trip, as only 3 more stops remain after the train crosses the massive bridge. The train soon eases into Kermit, Virginia to yet another large crowd, and then onto the crossing for the penultimate stop at Waycross, Virginia. Shortly after 3 p.m., the Santa Train pulls into Kingsport, Tennessee, the last stop of the day. The Santa Train's been called the world's longest Christmas parade because one of its purposes is to deliver Santa Claus to the city of Kingsport's Christmas parade. In Kingsport, Santa continues to toss gifts to a massive crowd, along with celebrity guest Megan Lindsay.
Oh man, it's, you know what? There's nothing more rewarding than giving back, and I think that you know, so many of these kids are just so sweet, and they're like coming up and they're looking for gifts for their parents and stuff, and so it's just really special. It's really awesome.
And as Santa joins the parade, the 73rd annual Santa Train officially comes to an end. The Santa Train doesn't begin or end with the annual train trip. There's a lot of planning that goes into the event, and there's also community outreach by CSX, the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce, Food City, and other sponsors, including a meet and greet this year by Santa with some special school kids.
Our kids have looked forward to the Santa Train for years and years and years. I've been a member of this community all my life, and I was a little girl going to the Santa Train. Of course, it's very special to me. And CSX actually contacted us through Amy McCall, through the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce. She and I talked a couple of times, and she asked me what kind of event we would like to plan.
And look what we got for you.
Hey, Santa!
Hey, there we go. Hey, Dakota.
Have a Merry Christmas, everybody.
And chief among the Santa Train's outreach is the Santa Train Scholarship.
The money kept coming in as the publicity hit, and we decided that we wanted to establish a scholarship fund for kids along the contiguous counties that the Santa Train ran through from Kentucky to Kingsport. And each year we have tried to award a scholarship, a 4-year scholarship. Right now it's at $1,250 a year for a 4-year period, $5,000, to a deserving child along that track that might not otherwise get to go to college, but has the background that looks like giving that little leg up that might make a difference to them.
But then there are questions about whether this year's Santa Train will be the last. Back in October, CSX shut down about a 20-mile section of the former Clinchfield route where the Santa Train runs, and the Erwin, Tennessee rail yard was shut down. So naturally, the future of the Santa Train seems to be uncertain at best. But this year's Santa Train marked the very first year that CSX CEO Michael Ward has ridden the train.
One of the things I find very heartening is everybody shares. So if somebody's gotten a gift, they let somebody else step forward and get a gift, and I think that's really great. Now, we think this is a great event and one we intend to continue. We're in our 73rd year, and next year will be our 74th, and we think it's a great tradition that should continue.
Only time will tell if what Ward said about continuing the Santa Train comes to pass, but for whatever the future holds, this year's train, as well as those in the past, have provided a lifetime of memories for those who've come trackside in the cold to catch a glimpse of St. Nick. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I can't let this special program get away without telling you a little bit about what the Santa Train means to me. Like so many out there that go out every year to see the train, I was one of those kids out there with my parents, and I loved every minute of it, and I continue to love it even as I got older. The Santa Train is one of those magical things that keeps you young when you're around it. Now I'm one of those parents, along with my wife Debbie, taking my children, Christopher Jr. and Allison, out to see the train, and I hope that one day they'll pass it down to their kids. Now we're going to leave you with some clips from this year's Santa Train, and I hope you've enjoyed our special look at the event, and I hope we see you next year trackside for the 74th Santa Train. So on behalf of the entire EKB News crew, thanks for watching, Merry Christmas, and God bless.